I didn't expect a threat to arrive folded inside a church program, warm with the heat of my own hands. The usher had just passed it to me with that gentle nod we give each other in Birmingham on a Sunday morning, the choir easing into total praise, when a yellow post-it floated to my lap like a feather that had lost its mind. In a blocky, rushed hand it said, "If she won't sign, move her out before Sunday. And if she fights, do what we discussed." My breath stuck, as if somebody had closed a fist around my throat and didn't know how to let go. 5 pews ahead, my son Marcus leaned over my daughter-in-law Tasha, whispering. She smiled without turning around. If you're hearing my story, please subscribe so more voices like mine can be heard. I'm Laverne Carter, 50 years old, born and raised on the west side of Birmingham, Alabama. I've got a small frame and a big laugh folks can hear from the church lot, and a grandson who calls me Nana V, like it's a secret only he and God are allowed to know. My house sits on Ellington Street where the crepe myrtles keep pinking up even when the world is tired. My late mama taught me to keep roses on the fence line, and a skillet seasoned better than any new money could buy. I quilt on Thursdays with the ladies down at New Hope and braid my granddaughter's hair on Friday nights while the kettle hums and the radio drifts through old gospel and R&B like it's sifting memories. I wasn't the kind of woman to put her nose in other people's papers, but that post-it made every hair on my arm stand up like a field of tiny soldiers. Move her out. Do what we discussed. I turned the program over as if the pages could swallow the words back. All I found was my sister Evelyn's name in the prayer request list, a picture of Pastor Reese, and the bake sale flyer I designed with tips clipped from the newspaper. No post-it. No handwriting. The thing had vanished like it had only been meant for me to see, then hide. My grandson, Jaden, 7 and all elbows, scooted closer on the pew. "Nana V, can we get 2 strawberry cupcakes after service?" His breath smelled like peppermint. I kissed his forehead. "We'll see what the Lord and your sweet tooth decide, baby." When I looked up, I caught Tasha watching me in the corner of her eye. She smiled the way people smile when a camera is on them. Nothing moved but her lips. Home is a 2-bedroom that my granddaddy framed with his brothers the summer after the steel mill cut their hours. A porch that leans like it's listening to whoever's talking. A yard that smells like cut grass and lemon oil when I get to wiping the porch swing. That Sunday after service, I put a pan of cornbread on the stove to cool, the cast iron clicking and settling in its heat. Jaden ran a toy truck across the tile while I iced the lemon pound cake for choir practice. I try to keep my kitchen like a good song, simple, clean, a little sweet. "Ma," Marcus called from the front door. "You good in there?" He works security at the old Ironworks Museum and picks up nights driving for a delivery app. He's got his daddy's hands and his daddy's temper when he's tired, which means I've learned how to set peace on the table before I set plates. "Good as a woman can be when her feet hurt but she's still standing," I said. He laughed, kissed my cheek, and followed his nose to the cornbread. Tasha came in behind him in a dress with a zipper that sounded expensive when it moved. She took a long look around my kitchen like she was taking measurements. "You know," she said, lowering her voice, "I saw a show where they opened up the back wall and put in French doors. Light makes everything look bigger. Modern. Light's free," I said, sliding the cake into the fridge. "French doors are not." "I'm just saying," she went on. "With the right buyers moving into this neighborhood, a refresh could do wonders for your value. Folks are paying crazy money. We should strike before the market slows." I caught it like a burr on my sweater. I wiped my hands and smiled. "You already got your starter home plans, Tash. Marcus told me y'all looking over in Roebuck." She blinked. "Roebuck's a pit stop. We have bigger dreams." Marcus cleared his throat. "Tasha, come on." It wasn't the first time she'd slipped "we" into the title of my house. But the words from that post-it laid against my ribs like a ruler, measuring everything that passed my ears. Move her out. Do what we discussed. Later, while the kids played hopscotch on the chalked walk, Tasha pulled a manila envelope from her purse. "I've been helping my cousin with real estate closings." She gave me a form. Quitclaim deed. If you ever wanted to add Marcus to the title just to make sure things are smooth, in case. "In case what?" I asked, even though I knew what fear looks like when somebody wraps it in a favor. "In case anything," she said, soft and reasonable, like a lullaby trying to hide the storm behind it. "You're still young, Miss Laverne. I know. But life be life and She gave a little laugh. I took the envelope. I didn't open it. I'll pray on it, I said. The lie tasted like metal. She doesn't go to New Hope unless it's Easter and the hats are pretty. That night, when they were gone and the kitchen was mine again, I opened the envelope at the table where the light is best. Quitclaim. Blank spaces waiting like a mouth with its jaw open. The notary line had the name of a woman I didn't know. D. Lattimore. I tucked the paper into my recipe box behind Mama's pecan pie card. If anybody were to go into that box, they'd better be ready to bake, and Tasha doesn't like flour under her nails. I made myself a cup of sweet tea strong enough to stand a spoon. I took out my old composition notebook, the black and white one I keep for grocery lists and sermon notes, and wrote at the top of a fresh page, suspicion. Felt ugly to write it, but my hand didn't tremble. I listed the post-it from the program, Tasha's we, the envelope, the notary's name. Then I circled Sunday. When trouble sets its table, it always tries to feed you from 2 plates at once. Monday morning, while I trimmed the rose bushes and hummed to the bees like Mama used to, Ms. Dot from next door came to the fence in her housecoat. Her son runs the barbershop over by the basketball courts, and she knows everybody's business without sounding like she's trying to. "Morning, V," she said, swinging a bag of tomatoes from her wrist. "You need any extra? Mine going crazy this year." "I'll take 2 for a BLT and bless the rest," I said, meeting her at the sagging spot in the fence. We chatted about nothing until she asked, "You got any city folks come by asking about buying your place? A young man was out here yesterday measuring the curb. Said he represented Lattimore Group. You know them." The name snagged. Lattimore. I kept my voice light. "Can't say I do. She pushed the bag through the fence. "Birmingham changing fast. Just make sure the change don't run you over. They came by mine too talking cash. Cash get folks acting like they forgot their last name, honey. Don't let it." I promised I wouldn't. When she left, I went inside and pulled the envelope back out. D. Lattimore. I wrote it in my notebook with a question mark. I looked up at the kitchen clock. 10:30. The courthouse opens at 8. I put on my flats and a cardigan even though the heat was already trying to climb into the yard and lay down. At the courthouse records window, a clerk with a bun that meant business asked what I needed. "Property transfer records involving Lattimore Group," I said, and then as if I had practice, "and a notary named D. Lattimore." "You an attorney?" she asked, tapping on her keyboard. "Just a woman who reads the fine print before it reads her," I said. She liked that. She pulled a couple of bound ledgers off a shelf like we were about to make biscuits out of history. We sat at a laminate table under a fluorescent light that flickered like it was waiting on a blessing. I went page by page, the way quilting taught me to. Small stitches, steady hand. Don't rush the corner if you don't want to rip the seam. In the last 6 months, Lattimore Group had bought 8 houses within 6 blocks of mine. 5 of those deeds had been transferred with quitclaims signed by elders, 3 widows, 1 disabled vet, and a man whose daughter had notarized the form. All 8 sales were below the assessor's value. Every new deed had a whisper of the same ink. D. Lattimore, Notary Public. The clerk leaned back, arms crossed. "You looking at a pattern?" "I'm looking at a plan," I said. My voice didn't shake, but my stomach made a sound like thunder trying to remember its name. I copied the addresses into my notebook and asked for a file copy of one of the deeds. When I reached for my purse, the clerk waved me off. "Consider it a senior discount," she said. I told her I was barely 50 and she said, "Discount for a woman with sense then." We both laughed, and I felt a tear sneak into the corner of my eye because kindness will do that even when you're bracing for the hit. Tuesday brought Jaden in his school uniform and a dandelion he had decided was a flower. He planted it in my empty sugar jar and placed it like a trophy in the middle of my table. "So you remember to make cookies today, Nana V," he said, serious as a preacher. His knuckles were dusty with playground chalk. "Cookies and then homework," I told him. We did letters and numbers and a reading page about a squirrel who kept hiding his own snacks and forgetting where he put them. Jaden laughed like he'd unlocked the secret of the universe. When I got up to check on the beans, I heard him riffling in my recipe box. "Boy," I called, "you best not be disturbing Miss Pecan Pie. I'm drawing you a secret card," he said, the way children advertise surprises by making them loud. "What's this paper, Nana?" I turned. He was holding the quitclaim deed with crayon fingerprints, already trying to make it brighter than it deserved. Something in me snapped, not anger exactly. Fear dressed as firmness. I crossed the kitchen, snatched the deed, and hugged him too tight. He made a little oof. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered into his hair. "Some papers bite." He looked at me with those eyes that never learned how to lie. "Is somebody trying to take our house, Nana?" That word made my spine stand up straighter than any chiropractic appointment could. "Nobody's taking what God gave us and what your great-great-granddaddy built," I said. "But sometimes people forget who belongs where. So we remind them." He nodded, as if that made perfect sense, and went back to his squirrel story. I slid the deed into a zippered pouch and tucked it under the casserole dishes, the heavy ones you only take out for funerals and Christmas. If the devil wanted the deed, he could learn to lift cast iron. That night, after Jaden fell asleep on the couch with a book on his chest, I called Pastor Reese. He's younger than me by a few years, but wise as an old oak. "You got a minute, Pastor?" "For you too," he said. I told him what I'd found. The post-it at church, the Lattimore group purchases, the notary on every deed. I kept my voice steady. I didn't mention the way my hands had begun to shake after I hung up with the courthouse, how I'd had to sit on the back steps and count the lightning bugs until my breath remembered how to belong. He listened. When I finished, he said, "You want me to call a lawyer from the congregation? Or you want me to pray while you decide who you need?" "Both," I said. He gave me the number for Ms. Felicia Grant, a fierce woman who writes letters at a kitchen table that has seen more victories than the city council chamber. He prayed over my house, my hands, my sleep. When we said amen, I heard Tasha's text come through. It said, "Quick chat tonight? Marcus and I want to swing by. Got something time-sensitive the plan we mentioned." The plan we mentioned. I wrote those words in my notebook and underlined them twice. They arrived at 8 with a bottle of store champagne and a plastic clamshell of frosted cupcakes, the kind that look festive and taste like a dare. Marcus kissed my cheek. Tasha's smile was already halfway to the pitch. "We got good news," she said. "Cousin Dee's partner is prioritizing our block. They're offering cash closing 30 days. If we package 2 or 3 houses together, they'll bump the money. We can finally get you out of this small place and into somewhere new. No stairs. All modern." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Ma, don't you want a place without that draft in the winter? Without the porch leaning like it's about to testify?" "I like my porch's testimony," I said. "And if I got a draft, I put on socks." Tasha chuckled politely. "We're thinking future, Ms. Laverne. Equity. Growth. The sooner we move you, the sooner we can." "Move me," I echoed. She blinked. "Move you into comfort." "What's wrong with the comfort I have?" I poured ginger ale into a jelly jar, as if it could be celebration too. "This house is paid except the taxes, and the Lord and me make sure they're handled. My garden is exactly 12 steps from my kettle. My neighbor can shout good morning from her collards. Why would I trade that for modern and neighbors who don't know how to return Tupperware?" Marcus rubbed his jaw. "Because you deserve better, Ma. Better don't always look like new," I said, keeping my voice soft because soft can carry more weight if you let it. "Better sometimes looks like what's been holding you when nobody else did." Tasha set her glass down with a click that sounded like a little burst of temper. "Well, the clock is ticking," she said. "Deals like this don't wait. What if your health goes south next year? What if Marcus needs to manage the property for you?" I faced my son. "Do you want to be on my deed, baby?" He hesitated just long enough for the air to tell on him. "It would make things simpler," he said. "For who?" I asked. He didn't answer. Tasha did. "For everyone." "Everyone is not my name," I said. "You know what my name is? Laverne. The one on this title since the day Mama signed it over to me in her nurse's scrubs with her hair wrapped up and her mouth still tasting like midnight shift coffee." Tasha's smile went thin. "So that's a no." "That's a not now," I said. "And a not with a quitclaim you brought in a purse." Her eyes narrowed, then smoothed. "Understood," she said, as if we were at a meeting and someone had offered a less than ideal deliverable. "Let's circle back next week." When they left, Marcus kissed my forehead. "You know I love you," he said. "I know," I said. Love and pressure look like dappled shades sometimes. You have to move your chair to see which one you're really sitting in. I locked the door behind them. Then I sat at the table and wrote in my notebook. Tonight, Tasha said, "We'll move you." Marcus said, "Simpler." They pushed cash. Mention Cousin D's partner. Lattimore Group? I copied the words from the post-it again, the ones I had memorized without wanting to. If she won't sign, move her out before Sunday. And if she fights, do what we discussed. Sunday was 4 days away. Wednesday afternoon, I went to see Ms. Grant. She keeps a little office behind the beauty supply on 12th where the AC rattles like it's fighting for its life. Her desk was stacked with binders and sticky notes like a city skyline. Order inside the crowd. "You came to the right woman in the wrong week," she said, grinning. "My docket is a mess. But tell me what's on your spirit." I told her everything: program, post-it, quitclaim, notary, Lattimore Group, 8 houses, below value, elders. She listened with both ears the way good attorneys and good mamas do. "First things," she said, tapping a pen on my notebook, "don't sign nothing you didn't bring into this world yourself. Second, if a notary shows up, you ask for her commission number and call the Secretary of State's office while she's sitting in front of you. People behave better when the law is on speakerphone. Third, if somebody knocks with cash, ask for proof of funds and a purchase agreement you can sleep on. Sharks don't like daylight." "What do I do if they don't ask?" I said. "If they just do?" "Then we file," she said, her gaze stone steady. "Injunction. Fraud. Elder coercion. Whatever fits. But I prefer a clean shot. You got anybody besides your son and his wife trying to push this?" "Cousin D," I said, tasting the sour of that name. "My sister's boy. Big talker, empty hands." She wrote it down. "Give me his full name. We'll run him." When I left, the sky had turned that low, greenish color Alabama gets when heat and weather are about to fuss. Ms. Dot waved from her porch. "You see that wind?" she called. "Tie down your roses." I went to the fence with twine and found a white envelope tucked behind the third slat. No stamp. My name in a fast hand. Inside, a photocopy of the deed to my house and a sticky note that said, "Sign line 4. Notary arranged. Friday 6 p.m. Don't make this hard." The note smelled faintly of that same cheap vanilla Tasha wears, the kind that leaves a cloud behind like a second opinion. I felt something in me go still, like a pond deciding whether to reflect the sky or swallow it whole. I tucked the envelope under my arm, tied my roses with 2 tight knots, untied them and did it right. Then I went inside and called Pastor Reese again. "Set aside a minute for Friday around 6, I said. "And bring your calm voice." He chuckled. "That the only one I got." Thursday morning, at the grocery store where Ms. Lula still writes prices with a grease pencil like the modern age is a rumor, I ran into Helena from the usher board. She lowered her voice over the bananas. "You hear Sister Alma over on Goodman? Her niece put her in a senior apartment and sold her house for pennies. Said it was streamlining." "Child, they streamlining folks right out their roots." "Who notarized?" I asked, casual as if I were asking who baked the pound cake last week. "Some Lattimore lady," she said. "Always smiling, always in a hurry." I put 2 sweet potatoes in my cart and added a note to my notebook between the price per pound and my reminder to call the plumber. Alma Goodman Lattimore. My list was turning into a map. Outside, in the June glare, Cousin D leaned on the hood of his sedan like a man posing for a photograph nobody asked to take. White polo. Sunglasses he hadn't earned. He flashed a grin quick as a blade. "V, look at you, still sharp." "I know who I am," I said. "What you doing lurking outside the potatoes?" "Waiting on family," he said, spreading his arms like a preacher who doesn't have a text. "Got good news. We got a notary slated to swing by your place tomorrow, do a little housekeeping. Real simple. 2 signatures, 1 blessing, and you ain't got to worry about a thing. I'll even bring barbecue. Make it a celebration." "Celebration of what?" "New chapter," he said. "Cash in hand, new place, less stress. You and Marcus out by the lake, maybe." "You mean Trussville?" I asked flat. "I don't float that way." He leaned closer, peppermint on his breath and a hint of sour he tried to cover. "Don't make this hard, V. We trying to help." "Help is what you do when somebody says they need it," I said. "You ain't heard me say that once." His smile cracked. You always been a tough one. I smiled right back. I been a living one. I went home and called Ms. Grant. They're coming Friday at 6, I said. You want me there? She asked. Yes, I said, but not alone. Bring a neighbor if the law allows. The law always allows witnesses, she said. I'll bring my paralegal and a body cam. We'll set it on a plant like we decorating. I hung up and breathed. Then I cooked, because when your hands are busy and your kitchen smells like onions and bell pepper, the world puts down its shoulders a little. I fried catfish in cornmeal like Mama taught me. Oil shimmering, not smoking. Lay the fish in away from you so the grease doesn't pop your forearms. Salt after. I made coleslaw with a whisper of sugar and the vinegar that'll make your eyes blink. And I put cornbread back in the oven just to warm the edges. Jaden finished his homework at the table. Tongue stuck out like concentration had a flavor. Tomorrow you coming to my school fair? He asked. We got a ring toss. I'm gonna win you a goldfish. I'll be there, I said, even though 6 o'clock felt like a thunderhead building just past the schoolyard. And we'll name that fish Victory. He grinned. Victory gonna live forever. From your mouth to God's aquarium, I said, and he laughed so hard he hiccuped. Friday came hot and slow. I pressed a dress like it mattered because how you face your fight is part of whether you win it. I put my hair up, tied an apron over my Sunday skirt, and laid out 2 plates as if company were coming, because they were just not the kind you bless. At lunchtime I went to Jaden's fair. The school lot was a swirl of sticky hands and raffle tickets and teachers who looked like they'd been running since dawn. We ate hot dogs under a tent that shook in the breeze. Ms. manned the cakewalk with a whistle that could stop a train. Pastor Reese helped the little ones with the duck pond, rolling his sleeves like he was ready to baptize rubber in the name of joy. Tasha didn't show. Marcus did late with his shirt untucked. He bent to hug Jaden and kiss my cheek like he used to when his knees were ashy and his voice was sweet. You good, Ma? He asked. I'm covered, I said, and his eyes searched mine for something I didn't let him find. At 4, I took the goldfish bowl in both hands while Jaden chanted Victory, Victory, all the way to the car. I set the bowl on my table at home where the late light makes the kitchen look like it remembers happiness. I told the fish to swim strong. Then I made coffee and waited. At 5:50, a white SUV pulled up, tires crunching the gravel like they were chewing. Marcus got out first, eyes darting. Tasha stepped out in a blazer sharp enough to cut bread. Cousin D came last, carrying a bakery box like he'd kept his barbecue promise. Behind them, a smaller sedan eased into the curb. A woman I recognized from the courthouse copies, D. Lattimore, stepped out with a tote bag where a notary stamp jangled like keys to a thing that wasn't hers. I smoothed my apron, touched the cross pendant Mama gave me when I turned 30, and opened my front door. The house smelled like lemon and onions and something else, resolve maybe. Welcome, I said, and the word felt like a coin I would know if it were counterfeit. Y'all right on time. When Friday came, I moved slower than usual, every step of my routine heavy with the weight of what I was about to face. I baked cornbread that morning not because anyone asked for it, but because kneading dough always steadied my nerves. The smell of butter and cornmeal rising in the oven made the house feel normal, but inside I was anything but calm. By 4 o'clock, I'd already laid out sweet tea, potato salad, and a pot of greens simmering on the stove. Folks say when you expect trouble, set a table like you expect company. It throws off suspicion. I had my Bible sitting open on the counter too. But this time I'd slipped the yellow note inside my apron pocket where I could touch it like a stone in my hand. At 5:30 sharp, Dee pulled into the driveway, her old Buick rattling like a song that had too many verses. She came in with her usual flourish, scarf tied high, gold bangles clinking, and squeezed me tight. You sure about letting him bring that notary here, V? She whispered. I'm sure about one thing, I said. If they're bold enough to steal from me, I'm bold enough to watch them lie to my face. 6 o'clock came, and with it the sound of tires crunching against my gravel drive. Daryl stepped out first, dressed too sharp for a casual Friday. His smile wide but his eyes darting like a man who knew the truth could snatch his mask away any second. Behind him was a woman in a gray skirt suit, holding a slim black case. Evening, Mama, Daryl said, kissing my cheek like nothing was wrong. This here's Miss Calloway, state licensed notary. She gonna help us make sure everything's squared away proper. Miss Calloway gave me a polite nod, her lipstick neat, her eyes cool and distant like she'd been paid to keep her feelings checked at the door. I gestured toward the kitchen. Well, come on in. We don't do business standing in the yard. We sat at the table, Dee at my right, Daryl across from me, and the notary opening her case with crisp efficiency. She pulled out a stack of papers and smoothed them flat on my tablecloth. This is the deed transfer, she said in a practiced tone. Once signed and notarized, ownership will pass in full to Mr. Carter. My stomach dropped, but my face stayed steady. I leaned in, pretending to study the lines like an old woman squinting to read fine print. In truth, I'd already copied down the county record number from the library earlier that week. I knew what property they were trying to shuffle, and it was mine. Daryl tapped the paper with his finger. Mama, this is just for safekeeping. Taxes is hard, upkeep is harder. I don't want you stressing. Let me carry that weight. I fixed my eyes on him and asked softly, and what about the weight of truth, son? You willing to carry that too? His smile faltered. Dee shifted beside me, crossing her arms like a shield. Before anyone could answer, the phone rang, the old rotary sitting on the counter. I excused myself, lifted the receiver, and nearly dropped it when I heard the voice on the other end. Mrs. Carter, this is Deputy Rayner from the County Sheriff's Office. We received your note about suspicious property filings. I need to confirm. Did your son approach you about signing anything recently? I glanced back at the table. Daryl was watching me, suspicion in his eyes, though he couldn't hear who was on the line. Yes, I whispered, turning slightly away. They sitting right here with papers now. The deputy's voice sharpened. Do not sign anything. I'll send someone out Monday to review the documents officially. Until then, keep copies if you can. I hung up, heart pounding. I couldn't let them know I'd gone to the law, not yet. So I turned back with a smile sweet as molasses. Now, Miss Calloway, you mind if I fetch my reading glasses? Eyes ain't what they used to be. She nodded politely. That gave me the excuse to slip into the back room. From the sewing box under my bed, I pulled the little Kodak camera Dee had found at a thrift store last summer. She thought we'd use it for family cookouts, but tonight it was my insurance. When I came back, I pretended to adjust my glasses, but really I snapped 2 quick shots of the top pages while flipping them. The click was soft, almost masked by the hum of the refrigerator. Dee caught my eye, gave the smallest nod. She knew. But then, my grandson Malik came barreling in from the porch, holding something in his small hands. Nana, look what I found by the fence. He plopped a manila envelope onto the table. My breath caught. On the front was written Carter Holdings in Daryl's handwriting. What you doing with this? I asked, trying to sound calm. It was sticking out the mailbox, he said innocently. Daryl lunged across the table, snatching the envelope before I could touch it. His face hardened. That ain't for you, Malik. Go on upstairs. The boy hesitated, confused by his father's tone. I reached out, patting his shoulder. Go on, baby. Nana's got this. He left, but the silence he'd dropped in the room was heavy as thunder before rain. Why hide mail from your own mama, Daryl? I asked. That ain't your concern, he snapped, but his voice cracked, betraying him. Miss Calloway cleared her throat, trying to regain control. Ma'am, if you're not ready to sign tonight, we can reschedule. But the paperwork is valid. Valid don't mean right, I said quietly. That night, after they left with papers and signed, Dee stayed behind. We sat at the table long past midnight, the air thick with collard greens gone cold. They gonna push harder next time, Dee said, rubbing her temples. You seen his eyes, he desperate. I saw more than desperation, I said. I saw fear. He knows I know something. I pulled out the yellow note again, laying it flat on the table. This is more than about land. Somebody wrote this knowing if I found out the whole picture, my life could be in danger. Dee frowned. So what's the whole picture, V? I didn't answer. Instead, I went to the hall closet, dragging down the old ledger my husband once kept for church donations. Tucked in its back pocket were receipts I'd begun collecting. Odd withdrawals, strange deposits under Carter Holdings. I flipped them open, pointing at the totals. This ain't just property, Dee. This is money moving through accounts I never heard of. Daryl's tied up in something bigger. And if I don't get ahead of it, I'll lose more than my roof. Over the next week, I played the part of the quiet grandmother, church on Sunday, pie cooling in the window, small talk at the market. But in secret I worked. I copied every receipt, every scrap of paper. I logged phone calls in a notebook. I even sat outside the notary's office one afternoon, watching as men in slick suits came and went, all wearing the same lapel pin shaped like a key. One evening Malik sat at the table drawing. Without looking up, he said, "Daddy told somebody on the phone. She too nosy. We might have to shut her up." "What does that mean, Nana?" My heart clenched. Out of the mouths of babes comes the truth. I kissed his forehead. "It means your Nana's got to be real careful, baby." I didn't let him see my hands shaking. By Thursday, the tension was unbearable. Daryl hadn't come by, but Dee had heard whispers from a neighbor who worked at the courthouse. Word is some developers connected to Lattimore got plans to flip half this block. Your house is the jewel. If they get it, the rest falls like dominoes. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my rocker with the Bible in my lap, the yellow note tucked between Psalms and Proverbs. I prayed, but I also planned. I would not be pushed out, and I would not be silenced. But I knew before I could expose the truth, I had to gather allies. Folks who couldn't be bought with developer money. That's when I thought of Pastor Green, Sheriff Tate's deputy cousin, and even Mrs. Johnson down at the county clerk's office. If I could pull them together, maybe the truth would come to light in a way Daryl couldn't twist. I just had to live long enough to make it happen. The next morning, as I poured my first cup of coffee, a knock rattled the door. I opened it, and there stood Pastor Green, hat in hand, eyes heavy. "Miss Laverne," he said, voice low. "We need to talk. I found something in the church basement you need to see." And with that, the floor of my world shifted again. The knock that shook my door early Saturday wasn't Trouble's fist. It was Pastor Reese's knuckles, steady as a drumline. He stood on my porch with his hat in hand and worry stitched across his brow like a seam that didn't want to hold. "Morning, Sister Laverne. I found something at church I need you to see. And I'd rather you weren't alone when you saw it." I slipped on my sweater even though the heat was already pouting in the yard. "Let me grab my notebook," I said. I tucked Jaden's goldfish bowl farther from the edge, victory blinking at me like a tiny, glassy-eyed amen, and locked the door behind us. We rode in silence past the basketball courts where boys were already working on their crossovers, past Ms. Dot watering her collards with the same gentle scolding she gives her grown son, past the corner where the new cafe put out tables that looked cute and cost too much. New Hope's brick face rose up warm as always, the bell tower sharp against a sky trying to remember rain. Down in the church basement, Pastor clicked on the light. The smell of old hymnals and lemon oil floated up the way memories do when you think you've put them away. He led me to the supply closet behind the folding chairs. Inside, stacked between boxes of VBS crafts and a broken vacuum, sat 3 bankers' boxes labeled with blue tape, trusteeship, deeds/benevolence/donations. "I was pulling forms for the bake sale," he said, "and these caught my eye. Last week you mentioned Lattimore Group. I've been nosy ever since." We hauled the boxes to a long table. The first one, deeds, held photocopies of old property records written in fountain pen cursive that made my eyes sting with my mama's voice. There it was, a 1972 addendum, signed by my granddaddy and 4 deacons, placing several elders' homes, including mine, under a church-supported protective covenant in case of hardship, coercion, or predatory transfer. The church had the right to review any sale or deed change involving those houses. My address was underlined twice in red pencil. The second box, benevolence, held envelopes, some fat, some thin. Stipends to help Brother Mayfield's light bill. A note for Sister Alma after her surgery. Checks logged with tight handwriting and pastor stamps, and tucked among them, a half-completed form. Emergency housing transfer, elder review. The contact name for questions. Felicia Grant SQ. "Oh, Pastor," I whispered. "We weren't out here alone after all." "Not at all," he said softly. "But somebody tried to pretend we were." The last box, donations, held what made my belly drop. A ledger of corporate gifts. Lattimore Group had donated community improvement funds to New Hope's defunct rec wing, except the rec wing never saw a dime. In the ledger margins, a tidy signature I'd seen before on courthouse copies and flyers stuck to telephone poles. D. Lattimore. A note beneath. Personal thank you to Trustee MC. And next to it, 3 cash deposits made the same week Marcus's checking account had gone from empty to breathing. My vision went fuzzy at the edges. I braced my palms on the table until the room came back. Pastor's hand hovered like he wanted to touch my shoulder, and also knew better than to move a woman who just found the floor under her feet wasn't where she left it. I'm sorry, Sister Laverne, he said. I love Marcus. I baptized that boy when his feet didn't even reach the bottom step. But this ain't him alone. This is a network and they been busy. I swallowed. Tasha's cousin DeAndre brought Dee Lattimore to my door yesterday, and the notary that came with them wasn't Dee Lattimore. It was a Miss Calloway. Felt like a decoy. But Dee Lattimore is signing the larger checks, and the group is scooping elders one by one. Pastor nodded. I called Ms. Grant. She's on her way. I also reached Deputy Collins, Tate's cousin from the sheriff's office. We'll do this clean. We prayed right there between the folding chairs and the old coffee urn that never brewed strong enough until Deacon Henry retired and took over. After amen, I wiped my face with the edge of my sweater and squared my shoulders the way I do before I lift cast iron. If they plan to move me out before Sunday, I said, voice steady now, let's give the Lord a show on Saturday. We didn't set traps, we set a table. Ms. Grant rolled in with a laptop, a portable scanner, and a tote that clinked with ink pads and legal tabs. Ms. Dodd arrived uninvited. I brought potato salad and a notary from my cousin's beauty school. Turns out her cousin wasn't a notary, but she was a witness and bold as brass. Deputy Collins, broad-shouldered and calm, shook our hands and set his body cam on the mantel like a paperweight. Pastor changed into his white collar shirt, soft armor, and laid out lemonade in styrofoam cups. If the devil wanted a meeting today, he'd have to sit up straight and use his napkin. I called Marcus. Baby, swing by New Hope. I made something you need to taste. You cooking at church? He asked, wary and curious in equal measure. I'm cooking the truth, I said gently. And I want you to eat while it's hot. Tasha came too, heels clacking a little faster than usual. Cousin DeAndre, D, rolled in with his sunglasses on his head like a crown he didn't deserve. 5 minutes later, Miss Calloway walked in with a folder and a pen that clicked like a metronome. A beat after her, a woman I hadn't seen before, sharp bob red blazer, stepped through the fellowship hall door. Dee Lattimore in the flesh. She scanned the room, masked a flinch at the sight of Deputy Collins, and flashed a smile like money. The air thinned a notch. Well, she said, looks like you're having a full community moment. Charming. Sit, please, Pastor said, voice even. We break bread and burdens in this room. We all sat. The folding chairs squeaked. Pastor bowed his head and we said grace, some because we meant it, some because it was easier to keep your head down when the Lord's name was in the air. Miss Grant opened. We're here, Ms. Lattimore, to discuss an attempted deed transfer of 1407 Ellington Street. My client, Ms. Laverne Carter, has been approached with a quitclaim deed outside of proper review. New Hope's 1972 protective covenant requires any such transfer for elders' parcels to be reviewed by the church. You failed to observe that. And you, Miss Calloway, appear to be notarizing transfers for elders without independent counsel or church review. Additionally, we have ledger entries of corporate gifts and personal thank yous to Trustee MC, whose initials happen to match Miss Carter's son, Marcus Carter. Tasha stiffened. DeAndre's jaw worked. Marcus dropped his eyes as if the floor had something to tell him. It's all above board, Dee Lattimore said smoothly. My company uplifts neighborhoods, offers cash so elders can retire in comfort. The covenant you're waiving is outdated. You can't enforce church review on a private sale. And as for donations, we support community partners. Always have. Ms. Grant slid a folder across the table. Then you won't mind clarifying why 5 of your last 8 deeds list sale prices far below county assessment, why Miss Calloway has notarized 3 transfers at elders' homes without independent witnesses, and why you've written thank yous to the same trustee whose son stands to benefit from placing his mother's house in a manageable holding. Miss Calloway's pen stopped clicking. Dee Lattimore's smile sharpened. Before she could retort, I spoke up. Before I continue, if my story touches your heart, please subscribe so more voices like mine can be heard. I looked right at my son. Marcus, when did you start working with them? He swallowed. Ma, I just wanted. Wanted what? I asked, not raising my voice, not dropping a single tear. A shortcut? A way past the grind? You let them put my name on a check I never saw and my house on a list I never agreed to. It was supposed to be temporary, he said, voice cracking. They said we'd consolidate assets and move you someplace better. They, Tasha and Dee, told me the covenant was old, that nobody would care. Tasha bristled. I told you to get the church to bless it. You said you would. You told me about the money, Marcus shot back. You said if I didn't take it someone else would. Deputy Collins cleared his throat. We're not here to referee your marriage. We're here to determine if crimes were committed. The room tightened like a song modulating too high. Ms. Grant tapped a page. Ms. Lattimore, your initials appear on ledgers with the phrase personal thank you. Who authorized cash payments to trustee MC? Her smile didn't budge. I'm not under oath. Would you like to be? Ms. Grant asked sweetly. Because we can arrange that very quickly. Pastor lifted a hand. Friends, this is a church. We tell the truth here even when nobody swears us to it. Silence. Then from the doorway a small voice. Daddy, don't be mean to Nana. Jaden, middle name Malik, which his teacher had started using and I wasn't ready to argue about yet, stood with his backpack half unzipped and a paper crown on his head from the school fair. He had heard enough to knit his little brow into a question the grown-ups didn't want to answer. Marcus sagged. Jay buddy, go sit with Ms. Dot, okay? Ms. Dot gathered him with her potato salad arms and shot me a look that said, you stand steady. I'll hold the babies. Ms. Grant slid another page forward. Also, this was left in Miss Carter's fence slat. She held up the photocopy with the sticky, sign line 4. Notary arranged. Friday 6 p.m. Don't make this hard. Miss Calloway, this is your handwriting, correct? Color rose in the notary's neck. My client dictated that note. And your client is? She flicked her eyes toward Dee Lattimore. Enough. Dee Lattimore snapped, the nice peeled right off. This market moves with or without your little feelings. We offered cash. The boy took a finder's fee. The wife facilitated. We streamlined. That covenant is unenforceable nostalgia. You people cling to shingles and porches as if they're sacraments. Pastor's chair scraped back. They are, he said quietly. Roots are sacred. Miss Grant didn't blink. There it is. Thank you. Deputy. Deputy Collins lifted his camplant off the mantel and nodded. We have admissions. We'll need to take statements. Miss Lattimore, Miss Calloway, don't leave town. Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter, and Mr. DeAndre Carter, you'll need to come by the station for interviews about the funds exchange. DeAndre shifted in his chair like his skin had suddenly gotten too small. I ain't no Carter, he muttered, but nobody cared about his last name now. Tasha swore under her breath, then covered it with a cough. Marcus dropped his face into his hands. I leaned forward, voice soft enough to make the truth feel like a hand on the shoulder. Listen to me, all of you. This isn't the end of the world. It's the end of a lie. There's a difference. Dee Lattimore stood, smoothing her blazer. You'll regret this. In 6 months when the city rezones, you'll all be calling me for opportunities. We'll build our own, Ms. Grant said, the kind of calm that makes sharks backstroke. And we'll be sending a preservation injunction to your office in an hour. As they left, DeAndre paused, looking older than he had any right to. I'm sorry. I thought I was getting us all ahead. Ahead of who? I asked, tired down to my elbows. Ahead of your neighbors? Your aunties? Your God. He winced and was gone. The fallout hit like summer rain. Fast, loud, and then a little bit of steam rising when the pavement cooled. Deputy Collins opened a formal investigation into predatory transfers and notary misconduct. Miss Calloway turned most cooperative once she realized her stamp wouldn't keep her out of cuffs. She handed over emails. Ms. Grant printed them like recipes. Evidence showed a pattern. Target elders with paid-off homes, dangle cash, push quitclaims, launder through holding entities that rhymed with family names to make the papers smell familiar. DeAndre had been the introducer. Tasha had been the make-it-modern voice. Marcus had been the son caught between wanting to please and forgetting what pleasing costs. He came by my porch on Tuesday, when the heat was feeling theatrical. He didn't sit. He stayed on the steps like a man who didn't know if he was welcome to come closer. "I messed up, Ma," he said, eyes on the floorboards my granddaddy had planed with hands that sang. "I wanted to give Jaden something I never had. I let shortcuts talk louder than your raising." "You let shame talk," I said gently. "Shame and hurry. They whisper the same lies in different suits." He swallowed. "Can you forgive me?" I thought of the notebook of suspicions on my kitchen table, of the post-it from the program, of the covenant tucked in my purse like a blessing you carry around folded until the edges stay soft. I thought of the last time I held him when his knees were skinned and all he needed was a cold rag and a promise that tomorrow would still come. "I can," I said. "But forgiveness and consequences are cousins. You can have both at the same time." He nodded hard. "I'll cooperate with the investigation. I'll make it right." "Making it right ain't a speech," I said. "It's a schedule." I slid him a list Ms. Grant had helped me write: public apology at New Hope, restitution to Sister Alma and other elders who'd been underpaid, volunteer hours with the church housing repair crew, financial counseling with Ms. Grant's friend who didn't even breathe without a spreadsheet, and therapy because the hole he was trying to fill with money wasn't a hole money could see. He read it one line at a time like each was a hill he deserved to climb. "Yes, ma'am." Inside, Jaden Malik to his teacher, but Jaden to me, drew a new crown for his goldfish bowl and taped it crooked to the glass. "Victory," he whispered to the fish. "You got a castle now." I dipped my head toward the bowl. "Me too," I said. "Just invisible." We didn't stop at my porch. Ms. Grant filed to reaffirm New Hope's 1972 protective covenant, and when a city council aide tried to say it was obsolete, the ushers, the choir, the deacons, and the young folks in church tees filled the chamber so full the microphones started behaving better. Pastor Reese spoke first, wearing his collar like a flag and his soft voice like a gavel. Ms. Dot followed with a story about how she'd survived 3 mayors and 2 tornadoes and didn't intend to let a group with a brochure blow her off her block. A teacher from Jaden's school read aloud the addresses already flipped, the elders displaced, the doctor's appointments missed because buses no longer stopped where they used to. It wasn't yelling. It was witness. The council tabled the rezoning. 2 reporters with notepads and hair that didn't sweat right interviewed me on my porch. I showed them my roses, because I wanted the picture to have something living in it. The headline the next day: Grandma's note blows lid off predatory property scheme. I didn't love Grandma in a headline, but I loved the lid being blown. On Sunday, the sanctuary felt like a chest that had finally exhaled. We sang Blessed Assurance and meant it. After the benediction, we set long tables under the fellowship hall fans and ladled spaghetti into bowls like we were feeding soldiers home from a war. In a way we were. Midway through the meal, Tasha appeared at the doorway wearing something that didn't click when she walked. She stood, not on heels or principle this time, but on nerves. "Ms. Laverne," she said, voice small, "can I speak?" We all went quiet in that way church folks do when the Holy Ghost and community business meet in the middle aisle. Tasha took a breath. "I am sorry. I got dazzled by numbers and kitchens with islands. I thought modern meant mercy. I forgot the difference." She turned to the room. "If my pushing hurt anybody, especially Sister Alma, I'll show up where Ms. Grant sends me. I'll bake. I'll drive. I'll run papers. Whatever you say." Sister Alma, small and mighty, patted the seat beside her. "You can start by eating," she said. "Then we'll talk about the rest." We watched Tasha sit, her shoulders dropping like a person who'd been holding a suitcase that wasn't hers. Marcus, 2 tables over, dabbed his eyes with a napkin and pretended it was sweat. Jaden offered Tasha half his roll like a boy who didn't know how to undo a thing but knew how to share the bread. The legal part took months to settle, the way the law puts on its shoes like it has all the time in the world. Miss Calloway lost her commission. D. Lattimore faced civil penalties and an indictment for fraud related to coercive transfers. When the DA called, Ms. Grant already had a file thicker than a church fan in July. DeAndre took a plea and, to his credit, spent weekends hauling lumber and roofing shingles for the very elders he'd helped target, sunburned and quiet. Marcus testified. Tasha did too. When it was over, our block was still our block, and the covenant that had slept in a box woke up and stood on its feet. During that season I kept cooking. I kept quilting. I kept a notebook for gratitude the way I'd kept one for suspicion. One evening I wrote, Thank you for the usher's hand and the post-it that turned into a lighthouse. Another night. Thank you for onions softening in the pan, for Ms. Dot's laugh, for Victory who is somehow still alive. I planted sunflowers by the fence, tall enough to see the new cafe's patio where the prices still made me whisper Lord under my breath. Sometimes the cafe folks came down our way to buy pound cake from the church bake sale. They learned our names. We learned theirs. You don't always win by pushing people back over the line they crossed. Sometimes you win by making the line a table and putting out plates. One Saturday that fall, Pastor asked me to speak to the youth. They sat cross-legged on the fellowship hall floor, restless and beautiful. I told them how fear makes folks hurry, how shame wears a cologne that smells like opportunity, how paper can push people if it's waved in the right hands. Keep your papers close, I said, and your people closer. If something makes you sign fast, breathe slow. Afterward, Jaden tugged my sleeve. Nana V, what happened to the first sticky note? The one you found at church? I smiled. It's right where it belongs. I'd tucked it in my Bible between Psalms and Proverbs, not because I needed a reminder of the threat, but because the same pages hold the answer. Wisdom, courage, and the kind of peace that wears work boots. That evening we ate on the porch. Fried chicken that snapped under the tooth and hot sauce that woke up your bones. Greens that tasted like patience. Macaroni that tasted like triumph. Ms. Dot brought a chess pie. Miss Grant brought her laugh and a jar of pickles that could probably fix your whole day. Marcus said the blessing, voice steady, no longer reaching for shortcuts, hands open on the table like he'd finally learned how to carry the right weight. Tasha squeezed his fingers, and I didn't need to count to see which side of promise they were on. Jaden named a second goldfish Justice. Victory and Justice swam in lazy circles like old men who had decided to stop fussing. When the sun slid behind the oak, the sky turned the color of a bruise healing. The porch lights came on up and down Ellington Street like a row of small yes. A choir rehearsal somewhere drifted Total Praise back into the air. The same hymn that was playing the Morning Trouble thought it had me by the throat. I closed my eyes and let the chords carry me. I didn't move, Mama. I whispered to the air where my mother has always lived. And I didn't get moved. Under the table my toes touched the porch's old plank. A message sent through wooden years. We still here. This was my story. Now tell me, what part touched your heart the most?